Hey, what is going on, people of the internet? Welcome back to another episode of Movies Good, Internet Bad, a celebration of the cinema uploaded right here to the place that hates it the most. I'm Cory, that's Shane, and this is our spoiler filled review of Alien Romulus. Shane, how are you, my good sir?
I'm great. I'm finally back in the swing of things. I was out of town this past weekend, so finally saw Alien Romulus.
Yeah, I've
It
been
was
waiting
about a
on this
week
one for like
later.
5 or 6 days.
Yeah, it was about a week later than I wanted to see it, but finally saw it, and we'll talk about it.
Yeah, well, when you get paid big money to go shoot exotic destination weddings,
Yeah,
you gotta take the money as
yeah,
it comes.
yeah. Put it right back into the channel, right?
That's right. Just we'll be rich one day. It'll be fine. You won't have to worry about anything. But yeah, before we get started, please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Like this video, tap that bell for notifications. Again, there will be spoilers here. And Shane, my big question for you is this, man. It's been 45 years since the first Alien movie came out back in 1979, directed by the great Ridley Scott. This is the 976th entry in this franchise, or so it seems. Does it still have the sauce? Yes or no?
So it was kind of interesting going into this one because I was really excited based on the trailer. And then because I saw it late, I saw enough people online talking about it, not really spoilery, but just in general impressions. And the way that the internet has talked about this movie, you would think it was the worst thing to exist. And so I went into the movie thinking, oh man, it's actually going to be not very good. And then I saw it and I kind of really liked it.
Same.
um, I get the complaints, but I think that people are focusing far too much on that aspect of the movie when I don't think that it detracted that much from the movie, except for the one thing, which was the deep fake of Ian Holm. Like that was bad. I think everyone unanimously agrees that that was bad. I don't know why they did it because it doesn't make sense in the story either. It's just like a callback. But anyways, we can talk about that later. But I think the rest of it, sure, there are callbacks in terms of lines and shots and even monsters kind of
Mhm.
to the other films.
Yep.
But I think it was done with so much heart and execution that it still feels like a solid movie on its own
Mhm.
regardless. And you know me, I'm very anti nostalgia bait and everything like that. But I think my main issue with it is when that's all the movie is,
Right.
right?
Sure.
When they're not trying to do anything else except shove in as much nostalgia as possible. That's why I didn't love Deadpool and Wolverine. That type of movie just does not appeal to me. This felt a little bit more like how I feel about Star Wars The Force Awakens,
Mhm.
where yes, it's a retread of A New Hope. Yes, there's a lot of stuff you recognize in it, but at its core, it's still a very fun, entertaining, well-made story with good characters.
Sure.
And for me, that's kind of what this was. It's not perfect. We'll go through some of the issues as we go, but I thought this was very enjoyable. I really liked Kaylee Spaney in that role. I really loved David Johnson
Yep.
in that role. He was
Mhm.
awesome. He was a
Yep.
standout and probably the best part of the entire movie. And for me, that chemistry between the two and that relationship just took the whole movie, right? Like if that didn't work, then yeah, I'd be out up here complaining about the nostalgia bait, but all of that stuff worked for me, so it didn't bother me as much as I thought it would.
Yeah, and obviously David Johnson should be in comic book movies now. I think
Oh
that's the
god.
the lesson.
Don't do it. Don't do it. Please.
That was all over Twitter as soon as the movie came out. Someone was saying he should play the Green Lantern in DC, and it's just like, okay, cool. We
Can we not have a pipeline of like breakout performance to comic book movies be the only actor pipeline out there?
No, that's it. That's the only acceptable thing,
Yeah,
Shane.
that's all this industry has to offer.
So I want to talk a little bit about the comparison you made to The Force Awakens, because I think there's more to that than just what's in the movie. So Force Awakens came out in 2015, and it was about 10 years after Revenge of the Sith had
Mhm.
come out. And at that point, this is before the prequels started to get some love from people. Prequel was a dirty word
Yeah.
based on what had happened from 99 to '05 in the Star Wars universe. So 10-year gap, Director comes in, plays a lot of the hits, makes a ton of money, makes a lot of people happy, kind of reintroduces a new generation to the franchise. That is not so dissimilar
No.
to what has happened here with Alien. Alien is a movie that came out in the 70s. Prometheus and Covenant came out in the I think one was 2012, one was 2017 or something like that. So almost a 10-year gap again. A movie comes out that kind of plays the hits and caters to the aliens crowd and not so much the Alien 3, Resurrection, Prometheus, Covenant.
They did have the black goo though.
They did
straight from Prometheus.
So. Yep, and there are some callbacks to almost every movie in the Alien franchise, but this one felt like they were trying to go back to the early magic of the series, very similarly to The Force Awakens, and again with a heavy emphasis on practical effects and sets and not green screening everything. There are a lot of parallels between what we saw here and what happened in The Force Awakens. Obviously, Force Awakens on a totally different scale, being the highest grossing domestic film of all time still after all these years. I don't think this will get anywhere near that level, but still fascinating.
It's still doing well too at the box office. I think it made 100 million the opening weekend or something.
Opening weekend, yeah.
So that's still solid, especially for a movie that was not supposed to debut in theaters.
Correct. Yeah. So this one, it was going to be a direct to Hulu streaming movie, but then a few years ago, Dan Trachtenberg's Prey came out and kind of revitalized the Predator franchise, and a lot of folks gravitated towards that film. So the folks at 20th Century Studios decided we're going to change course. We're going to throw this into a theatrical release. And honestly, I love the strategy there, because this movie only cost about $80 million to make. It's not a $250 million tentpole that has to make $1 billion to break even. It only has to do a couple $100 million to be successful. And then, even if it only made back its production budget, how long would it take Hulu to make that money back? Right?
It's true. And I think that we might see a pivot towards more movies like this, unless they're the major tentpole, your comic book, Star Wars, that type of movie. We'll see a lot more of these like smaller franchise films that are not wildly expensive, because they're much easier to pull a profit on. And damn it, this movie looked better than most of the $300 million movies, right?
Yeah. I thought the cinematography was off the charts. Set design, lighting, all that good stuff.
The production design was excellent, and it's kind of interesting because Prometheus, even though it's like a super prequel to Alien, a lot of the stuff felt very futuristic. It's kind of like the prequels of Star Wars, where like it's like it's before in the timeline, yet everything looks so new. It was kind of like that with Prometheus too, where it's like, I guess it devolves over time, but this was very much like exact aesthetic, all the beeps and boops of 1970s computers. Loved all that. Thought it looked great. Thought the lighting was awesome. There was a lot of backlit character, especially Andy. He had a lot of backlit shots where he just looks kind of menacing and heroic at the same time, which he threaded that needle perfectly. I felt, but it goes to show how much that the cinematography and the lighting can also frame him in that way. In the beginning of the movie, he's not very backlit or heroic, because he's mumbling through his words and broken, and he's defeated. And then when he takes on that other character, you can actually see the cinematography change and frames him differently and frames him, in a like lower angles, and you can really get that power out of him.
He becomes a much more imposing figure. About halfway through the film, when the switch happens.
And it's great to see the artistry not just in the performance, but in the actual filmmaking.
No, for sure. And when it comes to the filmmaking too, horror movies like this, when you get to use practical effects as much as possible. So whether it's the little animatronic face huggers, or the Offspring hybrid alien human thing at the end, that was a Romanian basketball player who's literally 7'7" tall in real life, that got into a giant costume and played that part, right? Not only does that stuff look more natural in camera, but you get more genuine reactions out of the actors when you can actually scare them a little bit.
Yeah. Wasn't the story from the original Alien that they didn't know the chest burster scene was going to be what it was?
Yeah, yeah.
And so the reactions are all genuine. Yeah.
Yeah, and that still to this day is one of the best, in my opinion, it's one of the best scenes in any sci-fi or horror film, because the shock value is just, it's there, you know. So just all of that stuff, it all adds up to really create a mood, and you know, it's very dark on that ship. The whole movie, I don't think there's like an ounce of sunlight.
No, that's kind of the point of the movie, right? Because they're trying to go to a place with sunlight.
Yeah,
but
and
they don't.
I think the most light is when they're crashing into the rings of the planet, and that's about it. You know, everything else they had to really use lighting to their advantage, use those inky dark blacks of the shadows to do their jump scares and all that stuff. I thought it was super effective, and I could go on and on all day about the actual making of the film.
Yeah, the technicals are excellent. I think what I liked the most about the movie was probably about the first 30 minutes. It felt like a real movie where you actually have an act one, right? You have your little stinger intro, and then you have your, you know, character down on her luck, and you get that character motivation, and you introduce that dynamic between her and Andy, and then you figure out why she's going to go do what she does. You compare that to something like Prometheus, where it spends about 5 minutes and then they're off on the mission. This is very much deliberately setting it up, similar to how the first Alien movie does it, where I think it goes an hour before anything really of substance happens. It's a very slow burn in that movie before anything actually occurs, but it's better for it. And I felt like this one, you got all that, right? If you didn't have all of that set up and the backstory of why she's doing it and the desperation of, I got to get off this place, right? If you didn't have any of that, then this movie would not work.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
Not enough movies take their time, so I appreciated it. Honestly, I thought they could have taken a little bit more time. They could have had an extra beat where she leaves that ship and then goes off and does her own thing, and then maybe like more bad stuff happens to her and she's like even more desperate, then she joins the mission, rather than just kind of changing her mind on the spot. But I digress. It's not a big deal for me.
But yeah, I think one of the complaints that people had about the film was that it pulled too many ideas from the original films, but that's a great pull, right? The idea of actually establishing who your characters are, what all their motivations are, and also just showing them living life a little bit, where they're all kind of drinking beer, you know, at whoever's house that was.
Yeah.
You know, movies have a tendency to, I think the world that we live in today with the attention shortages that, you know, cell phones and social media brought on, it's like you feel this pressure to just plow right into the action and not really set things up. You know, the true masters of filmmaking have always been good at doing stuff like that. So your Ridley Scotts, your James Camerons, you know, those people, they really, the idea is you have to invest in these characters, because this isn't Marvel where, you know, within the first 5 minutes, oh, you already know who Deadpool is. You already know who Wolverine is. You already know who Happy Hogan is, because you've seen 36 other Marvel movies that show all their characters and what their arcs are. Every character in this story is brand new except for the Xenomorph, right? Yeah. So you have to introduce all of them.
Well, not every character.
Well, yeah. Well, he is new because he has a different name. Damn it. I didn't mind that whole thing, by the way. I know that
I
it's
thought
not
it was
necessary.
Really bad, and it was unnecessary, and they could have just picked a better actor, and it would have looked and played so much better.
They could have, but again, I want to do a study, and I was telling you about this, where you go through and like, how much time is he actually on screen?
Yeah.
And then what percentage of the film is that? And like, if you're going to let that be the thing that ruins it for you, I don't know what to tell you, man.
Yeah. My wife has only seen the first Alien once, and she had no idea who that was. So, and that's another thing too, like, who's it for, right? That the hardcore fans are probably not going to like it, and the general audiences are not going to understand it. So why put it in the movie at all?
Yeah, it's a weird choice, especially when Michael Fassbender's like
right there.
still alive and was awesome in
Yeah,
Prometheus
if you're
and
gonna
Covenant.
go, if you're gonna go call back, then yeah, Fassbender probably works a little better. But it could have just been anyone. You could have picked somebody else. But whatever.
Yeah.
Uh,
So filmmaking techniques aside, what do you think of the story of the movie?
I think it worked. I one thing that I actually really enjoyed about this movie, in contrast to something like Prometheus or Alien Covenant, is that none of the deaths felt stupid. That's
Okay.
a big problem that everyone has with Prometheus and Alien Covenant, is where you kind of roll your eyes because people are acting dumb
Mhm.
and that's how they die. I didn't feel like anyone in this movie acted dumb. Like all of their deaths made sense in the context of their motivations. Even the guy you weren't really supposed to like, which is like that British guy,
Mhm.
the cousin guy.
The cousin, yeah.
Yeah, you weren't supposed to like him, but like he died going out trying to kill the thing. It wasn't
Right.
like he was doing something dumb. And even when he was trying to save the chestburster girl, he really thought like, we're not going to kill this girl.
Right.
Like he was trying to do the right thing from his perspective. Whereas like you go into Prometheus and it's like those scientists and they're like trying to pet the alien. It's like, what are you doing?
I know, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
So-
look at this tentacle covered
Yeah, I'm
thing
gonna
that
take
I've
my
never
helmet
seen in
off.
my
Like-
entire life.
Yeah. It's so stupid. So stupid. So I really enjoyed that aspect of it. Where it's like, okay, this is actual peril. It's not, you're not laughing because they die. And I really enjoyed that aspect. It's a problem for a lot of horror movies, and this did it correctly. I will say the movie's maybe a touch too long. It had it pulled the fourth act thing that Alien had, where
Yeah.
they escape the ship and then, oh, just kidding, there's another
Right.
alien here that you have to kill. It felt a little bit like Sunshine, where it's like the third act just goes so off
Oh,
the
okay.
walls crazy with a crazy man.
Yeah, it
but
did.
I will say I appreciate the balls that it took to take Alien Resurrection and take the one thing that everyone hated from that movie, which was the human alien hybrid, and
yeah.
make it the big bad of your movie at the end.
Yeah.
That took a lot of balls, and I think it worked. That thing was so creepy and awful looking. The first shot where it's kind of going through the hallway and it's like a full ass adult man,
Mm-hmm.
really creepy looking.
Extremely. Yeah.
Yeah, everything about it was kind of gross and sexual, which that's the whole point.
That's H.R. Geiger.
Sexual allegories.
Yep.
Loved all that. But I will say the one thing that becomes a problem is, and you kind of have to suspend disbelief, but like in the first Alien movie, the guy gets face hugged,
Mhm.
and he's in there for like a day,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then he's fine, and then he's fine for like several hours, and then a chest burster happens.
Mhm.
And it feels like in all those sequels, they're like, well, we've seen that happen, so we can't draw it out anymore.
Just
So
skip
now
right
it's going
over
to
it.
happen in like 10 minutes. You know, she gets impregnated and chest burster within 30 seconds. The same, and then it's like an adult alien in like 20 more seconds.
Yeah.
And then the same thing happened with the baby, where it was a baby and then it was a full ass adult human alien morphing thing in like 20 seconds.
Yep.
So I didn't really love that aspect of it, but I get why it had to happen.
Yeah.
I don't know how you fix it. This is one of those things where it's like the first Alien was not meant to be a franchise. And now
Exactly.
they franchised it, and so you gotta up the stakes somehow.
Yep.
And then the other thing that choice I think that I would have made differently from a story perspective is when she sticks herself with the thing
Mhm.
to give herself the powers. I wish
Yeah.
they had not shown that. I wish you had found that out later,
Okay.
because then it would have been more of a surprise, because you kind of set that up probably 15, 20 minutes before the baby comes
Yep.
in. But I feel like it maybe would have been different if maybe she looks at it and then you cut and you're like,
Oh, and you're like,
Did
ooh,
she
did
do it?
Did she?
is she going to do it? And then you don't find out till later that
Yeah.
she did. That might be a little bit better of a setup, because otherwise you just know where the movie is going way before it goes there.
Mhm.
And I get that that's also kind of a tension play, like you're just waiting for that to happen. But anyways,
Yeah, it's interesting. I know you're not much of a a horror person, so
No, I'm not.
I expect you probably haven't seen Fede Alvarez's other films, but he did like a soft reboot of The Evil Dead
Yeah.
back in 2013, and a lot of the stuff you're talking about, like the fourth act thing and all that, it all happens in there too.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, it's like, you know, I think a lot of times directors just do what they know,
Yeah.
and you know what worked for them previously. But yeah, I thought the story, for the most part, again, making the Force Awakens comparison, relatively simple story.
Yeah.
Right.
Very.
We want to get off of this planet and get away from this oppressive culture from the Weyland-Yutani company. Here's how we're going to do it. Here's how it all goes wrong. Everybody dies.
Mhm.
Right? Like it's typical Alien format.
Yeah.
And it even ends with Kaylee Spaney's character reading the report the same way that Ripley does at the end of the first Alien movie. I'm the only survivor of whatever, you know.
Yeah.
And that's it. And that's fine. There's some expositional dialogue, which I'm surprised you haven't brought up yet, that
there's a couple early on.
Yeah.
But it was so short that whatever.
Right. It just kind of gets to business and gets to killing. And that's, you know, really, like, I was hoping that this would be a little bit of Alien and a little bit of Aliens. And I think that's what we got, right? Yeah. You know, it leans more into the horror movie, but it also has some pretty big action, like that anti-gravity scene at the end.
Really good.
It's fantastic.
I thought so that cool. Was you know, you knew it was coming, the Chekhov's gravity thing.
Yep.
They set that up so early, and there's no way they weren't going to pay that off. Yeah, and I like how they got there, right? The puns. It's a good writing trick where you set up the puns early, and then that's the revelation at the end is a pun. So, liked all that aspect. There was one line in there, and it wasn't "Get away from her, you bitch." I did not like that. My theater loved that, by the way, because of course,
yeah, because it plays to a general audience.
Everyone
right?
laughed.
Yeah.
But the one line that I didn't love was it was after Andy like changed and like he was doing something, and you just zoom in on Kaylee Spaney and she's like, "Andy, are you even in there?" or something like that. I was like, oh God. Like you don't have to say that.
We already know.
Yeah.
He's not in there. It's okay. Yeah. Right.
It feels like somebody explaining their thoughts when you can see it on their face. You could have just shown the horror on her face and you get that whole idea. You don't need that. Yeah. But otherwise, I thought it was fairly inoffensive. It's not a perfect movie. That the AI thing with the Ian Holm thing was really bad. Definitely bad. I did not like it. I think his mouth looked weird. And I totally get the complaints for that. But I don't think that ruined the movie by any stretch of the imagination. And I think a lot of people are letting it ruin the movie.
Right. Which is weird.
Yeah.
I will say, though, to agree with you, Rogue One came out 8 years ago.
Yeah.
And Ian Holm looked no different than the resurrected Peter Cushing did.
Yeah.
Like it's like
better.
How has the technology not gotten any better at all?
Yeah,
right?
his face was like too small for the face. It just looked weird. But also going back to Rogue One, everyone calls this the Rogue One, and it's so stupid because everyone calls this like the Rogue One of Alien. And the only reason they say that is because there is a CGI deepfake, because the movies could not be any more different in terms of how they're executed. I think Rogue One has a lot of nostalgia in it, but it's trying to do a different thing. It also, the nostalgia didn't bother me in that one either. But the problem with Rogue One is that it, as a story, does not work.
Yeah, it's a mess for the first hour and 10 minutes.
Yeah, like the character work in this movie is so much better than anything Rogue One ever did that, like, I hate the comparison. I think it's much more in the vein of The Force Awakens than it is Rogue One.
Yeah. You want some fun facts? I got some fun facts.
Let's hear it.
All right. So we went through a few of these already. We already talked about how the basketball player who's 7.5 feet tall played the hybrid, originally meant for Hulu. We already talked about that. They shot the movie chronologically.
Oh, cool.
Which That's the second movie that we've talked about.
What was the other one? I just heard
Trap.
about this. Trap. That's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
the M. Night movie.
Yes.
Not the conventional way of shooting a movie.
No.
But maybe it's becoming like a new thing. I don't know. Maybe the actors are working better as they ramp up towards the conclusion or whatever.
Everyone kind of feels the urgency or something.
Yeah, maybe. Who knows? Fede Alvarez brought back the team from Aliens for the special effects for this.
Okay.
But what's cool about that is that all of those guys, when they worked on Aliens, they worked on a team together. And then over the last 30 or whatever years, they all branched off and started their own companies and did their own things, and they hadn't worked together since.
Oh, that's fun.
So he brought them all back, and he said it was really cool to have them on set, which is pretty neat.
It's not dissimilar to the plot of the movie.
Yeah, right.
Bring all the alien things together into one
thing.
Yeah.
Apparently, in the background of a handful of shots, there are emergency telephones
from the game.
The game,
yes,
Alien Isolation, which I haven't played, but you have, and
I've played 2 hours of it. And
I was going to say I don't want to bring up any old wounds or anything.
Couldn't play anymore. It's just you're just alone, and an alien is hunting you, and that type of game just scares the shit out of me. So I couldn't.
But apparently, the phones are save points.
Yes, they are
in the game, and they're also omens of something terrible being on the verge of happening,
right?
And they frame them the same way. And Fede apparently has played the game and said it was an inspiration for him when he made.
I swear he has played The Last of Us 2. There's too many commonalities. The puns, Jackson, Dina, too many similarities. He has played The Last of Us 2.
You saw that picture of Kaylee Spaney and Isabella Merced together, and people were just like, "Oh my god,
yes,
that's Ellie and Dina
in the show."
But Kaylee Spaney is who a lot of people want to see as Ellie, apparently, or whatever.
Well, it's also funny because the other girl that they wanted to play Ellie is the girl who's playing Abby in season 2.
Caitlin Deaver, right?
Yeah.
That is good. I got one more. It's a little bit longer, but Fede Alvarez said that he had to battle with Disney executives to make sure the movie ended the way that he wanted it to. It says that Disney pushed back against the scene at the end of the film where Rain has to fight the offspring.
Oh.
And he said, so when I got pushback, that's when I said, okay, that's good. We're on track. The studio is fighting us on this one. So we're moving in the right direction.
I liked that bit, by the way.
Yeah.
It was so creepy. And that jump scare at the end was terrifying.
It says that Disney's discomfort was not because they didn't like it, but because they thought it might just be too much for like a general audience or whatever. And Fede said, yeah, now that you said we shouldn't do it, I know that that's what we're going to do. And he said, if you're given an alien movie by a corporation that's owned by Disney and they immediately say, yeah, let's make it, you're failing somehow. So we really pushed it to the limit, and I'm glad that we did. Yeah. I like that. I think it's cool.
I thought it was bold. I liked it. Like I said, to take the thing that everyone hated about the Alien franchise and kind of fix it and make it better, that takes guts, and I think it worked.
Yeah, and to be able to say no to the studio that's cutting the checks for all this and say, no, I think this is the right course, and I think this is what we should do, and to eventually get them to agree with you and let you make the movie that you want to make. I think that a lot of directors today are too afraid of that because of the job security and the financial aspect of it and whatnot. So pretty cool to see him kind of put his foot down and say, no, this is
very successful for them. There's 25 people on Twitter that hate the movie, but whatever.
But yeah, any final thoughts before we wrap this one up?
No, I'm just summarizing my thoughts in total. It's a remix of everything that came before it. It is playing the hits, but for me, it had enough heart and enough execution and enough technical merit that it didn't feel like a cash grab to me at all.
Cool. Yeah, I'd agree with that, and I think it's absolutely worth the time to go out to the theater and see it big, see it with a nice sound system. It's got great sound design and everything, and it'll scare the crap out of you with all those loud noises. So that'll do it for this video. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop us a comment below and let us know what you thought of the movie. Did you like it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Did it kill you like Ian Holm and then bring you back from the dead in CGI form? God only knows. We will be back. We have some other thoughts for another video about the state of streaming services that we're going to get into. And Shane and I might have to drink a little bit before we get into that. It's going to be a good time. So stay tuned for that and so much more. And until next time, we'll see you guys in the next video.